Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 14 of Voices of Resilience. Today, we're joined by the lovely Arwyn, who is going to talk us through a little bit about his life and experiences, which include some really unfortunate happenings of cancer diagnosis twice, some other physical health problems, and feeling suicidal, attempting suicide, and also losing his brother by suicide. Still praising God on the other side. Thank you so much for joining us on So Online Radio. Welcome, Erwin. Thank you so much for joining us on So Online Radio. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. Would you like to introduce
My
yourself?
pleasure. Yeah, my name is Arwyn Bailey. I'm known as a Time Lord, uh, which means that I capture moments in time through the art of photography and video, and that's what I do for corporate clients, basically. And I work all over Europe, work throughout the UK, etc., etc. Uh, uh, yeah, but that's what I do.
Amazing. And do you enjoy this? I'm assuming you do enjoy this kind of work. It's your passion.
Yes, I do. I mean, I remember being given a camera, a box camera, when I was aged about 4 or 5. And for me, I think it was by my grandmother, and I've still got what I think is that box camera. But for me, I was just captivated as a young boy. I remember standing there, and it's in the winter, and the local park is in snow, and it's in winter, and it's iced over in the pond, and ducks are walking on the ice in the pond. And this magic box I had on me, and when I did the shutter and took a picture, I couldn't wait to get back my 12 black and white photos. They were all they were terrible. But it was that magic, being able to stand in the moment. And what I think about photography is no matter who you are, when you take that photograph and take that image, you're the only person in history who's ever taken that very same image at that moment in time. Nobody else has got the image. It might be similar, but nobody else has got that image in 15 billion years of history of the earth.
That is such a wonderful way of looking at it. And a little bit mind blowing if you say it like that. The only one in history to ever have captured that exact moment.
Yes.
Beautiful way to look at it. So, Owen, could you talk us through a significant turning point in your life? And if you're happy to share some of your personal life and as well as your career if you choose.
How you're feeling and how you're responding to people and your mental approach to life does affect your career and what you can do within it. And so basically in 2012 was a bit of a pivotal year for me. So in the January, I recontracted a minor form of cancer, bladder cancer. I was aged 38 when I first had it, about 12 years earlier. And so I was now in my 50s, early 50s. And basically in 2012, January, I had it again. I've never had chemotherapy or any treatment, fortunately. It's the second slowest growing form of cancer, prostate cancer being the slowest for men. And basically, they go in, they resect it, and I'm fine. And I've had a few resections of those in my time. Then in the April of the same year, 2012, my brother sadly took his own life. And that was a bit of a shock. I'll go into a bit about that in a minute. And then in the August of the same year, I had bronchial scar tissue on my left lung. And then in the very end of September, beginning of October, my mom, who had had pulmonary pulmonary embolisms, had a massive stroke. She was registered blind. She'd lost about 80, 90% of vision in one eye, and she had about 40% left in her right eye. And she'd had these other incidents, which are sort of mini strokes. She had a massive stroke, as big as you can have without it killing you. And under medical advisement and with agreement with the family, we agreed no food and water. And 10 days later, she passed away in front of us. Yeah, so that 2012 was a bit of a year, and I don't want one event or one series of events to be touted as being more serious or greater or lesser than somebody else's. This is my story, and they did affect me. And you may have just one event. It may seem like a small, insignificant event, but these events can have major impacts upon our lives. And so it's relative to you. So that was a major turning point. And that year, during that time, I was a financial advisor running my own company, had done for many years. And I downsized it a bit. And I thought, I don't want to do this anymore. And during that year of 2012, we had to do some new exams and be qualified by 2013, January. And more exams. And I was on target and off target all the way through that year. And in the end, I thought, I don't want to do this anymore. Had a chat to my amazing wife, Helen. So I had deep conversations with her. And she was gracious enough to say, no, I can see why. So I sold my business. I went away to a family, and other members of the family, extended family, had a cottage in North Wales, went away on my own for about a week, came back, and I announced I wanted to be a photographer full time. And so I officially set up in January 2013 as a photographer and saw through the sale of my business, which was difficult and painful for many reasons. But yeah, so that was my story of 2012. And it was really a changing point in my life, really.
Oh my gosh, it sounds like a year from hell, if I'm being honest with you, Arwyn. Like, I can't imagine the pain and the strength that the pain you went through, the strength you needed to just get up every day. I'm sorry that you went through all of that, and I'm so grateful that you've opened up today and sharing your story.
That's okay. What I would say is that I look at things like this and I think, at least I'm not in Palestine. At least I'm not. As I say, we have to be careful of immersing ourselves in these. And that's what I went through. So with regards to my brother, he had abdicated from any relationship with his siblings for quite a while. And about 2 years previous to this, he actually rang us all up individually and said, look, I know I've done this for various reasons. And basically, I'd like to have a relationship with you. And I thought, okay, and I was cautious. I used to be really close to him when we were growing up. He's the oldest of us four. And basically, he was my big brother. He was my hero. And sorry.
Sorry, just take a moment.
I'd started to trust him again. And he wanted to have at least one phone call a month with me, which we were doing. And literally a day or two before he took his own life, he rang me up, and I was dealing on the phone with somebody else who was having suicidal thoughts, a friend. And I said to my son, I said, can you tell Uncle Gareth I'll ring him back? Anyway, and it got late with this other friend. I thought, okay, I'm too tired now. I'll ring him the next day. And then the next thing I heard was he'd taken his own life. And when that happens and we'd reestablished a relationship, you feel a number of emotions. You feel betrayed, you feel angry, you feel lots and lots of things. And there are different stages of grief that we go through. I think it's some stages of grief over a period of about 3 years. And I'd say anybody going through any grief, any bereavement, don't be hard on yourself. There is a process to go through, whoever you are and whatever circumstances. And so that's difficult. And then I remember in the July I was at such a low point. I've always struggled with mental health ever since school. And I'd planned my own suicide. Um, and for many, many different reasons, but I was at a low. But then found a counsellor who were rubbish. And then I found a really good counsellor in 2013 in January, and they were amazing. And one thing I learned from suicide, and this is an unpopular thing to say, is that when you're in that, and I've been in that situation in that year and since, you are at a position where you have no choice. And it sounds strange talking rationally now, because you truly believe that you will be better off, and so will everybody else. People think it's selfish, but it actually isn't. People think it's a lack of courage, or it's courageous. People have all sorts of thoughts like this, but until you've been there, you can't fully understand the position that you find yourself in. And I found myself in that position because what depression is, and this is again unpopular, and I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist, depression is quite selfish. Your world revolves around you. And all I wanted to do was curl up in a fetal ball and stay in bed and not get up. That's all I wanted to do most of the time. And I wanted to take my own life. And I was at that juncture. I'd written the letters to my kids and my wife and others. And you are at the point of no choice. You can't see any other way out.
And you're right. I think, Arwyn, so my background is I did a lot of years in crisis suicide prevention management, and that's one thing that we came across a lot. And we all have our own personal stories, don't we? And you're right, it does feel like you have nothing else. It's the permanent solution, and you can't see it as a temporary problem, like the temporary problems, and that feels like the only way out. I can understand that. And how do you deal with that now then?
The initial counselling I went through then in January 2013 was really good. And I did that for about 2.5 years, but then feeling and so on came back. I went to the doctor. I was on antidepressants, citalopram. My family helped. My wife helped hugely. Having kids, grandkids helped hugely. After I'd had a resection, going back to January that year, I remember being in hospital, recovering from the resection from my bladder cancer. And this was a build-up. This was before my brother took his own life. I wanted to basically poo and shit. And I wanted to vomit at the same time. And I had my head over the sink and my bowels were loose. Which way do I go? But I wanted to vomit. And I remember having my head in that sink bowl, in the loo, saying, God, I don't want this anymore. Because other things had happened the previous 2 years as well. And so basically, that was the start of it. All the culmination, me verbalizing it.
So Online Radio brings to you Voices of Resilience with Miss Tina.
So I don't know when it was. It was about a couple of years ago. I wasn't going through counselling anymore, 2-3 years ago. And I came across this lady who talked about hypnotherapy at a network meeting online. It was during COVID. Juanita. And basically, I was intrigued by it. So as a Christian, I was always thought hypnosis and self-hypnosis, you're giving over control and it's evil and it's bad and you mustn't do it and so on. However, just before this, I'd been working as a photographer with a hypnotist who taught dentists how to help patients self-hypnotize. If they needed anesthetic, they're allergic to it or fearful of it. And I photographed her teaching dentists how to do this. And there's video of Sharon. She's an amazing lady. There's a video of her, which was years before. A 10-year-old was having root canal surgery whilst under hypnosis. So you're not giving over control. What you're doing is you're having somebody guide you. So I went to Juanita and I booked a one-to-one with her. I said, okay, let's try it. And I then actually, before that, the counselling with BT, psychodynamic, using breathing exercises, breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth, let shapes come to your mind and colours. And for me, greens and blues and round shapes are soft. If I'm on red or orange, even yellow, and it's a hexagon, octagon, you don't want to be near me. But basically, that's, if you like, from what I understand it, partial hypnosis. But anyway, so moving forward then to Juanita. And so I did 3 sessions with her. And it was absolutely incredible and liberating. I remembered something happening in my childhood suddenly in the Cub Scouts. I was in a kit cupboard, the door was slightly ajar, and it was dim lighting, and I was getting something out. And then I heard this person come in behind me, one of the leaders, a male leader. I turned round. He then put his hand down the front of my shorts, and then the door opened. Somebody else saw what was going on. They closed the door and walked away. Then he took his hand out and walked away. And that was it.
Wow.
What happens with your subconscious when you go through PTSD events? It closes down. The thing I learned from Jackie, my first counsellor, is that it's like an athlete who injures a limb. Your limb says, don't use me because it hurts, I'm in pain. But if you don't use that limb, it atrophies. And you can't live without a subconscious and a memory bank working and building new memories. You can't live. We know very little about the brain, probably about 5% of it. We don't understand it. Suddenly, thereafter, after doing this session of hypnosis, and I did 3 sessions with Juanita, suddenly my child memories, I was aged about 8, maybe 10 at the most, but probably 8, 9. When this happened, and I always remember leaving the Cubs, and I don't know why I left the Cubs early, before age, and then we moved house, but I did then rejoin the Scouts a bit later. But I couldn't remember much in my childhood, snippets, glimmers. Suddenly, I'd wake up in the middle of the night. These memories of my childhood are just flooding back, and it's like I'm now viewing my life, but it's almost as though it's a person that I hadn't related to for 50 years. I'd actually closed down my conscious, so I didn't want to be hurt again. And then gradually it opened up, but my previous memories to this instant. And now I'm sort of compiling some notes and memoirs and noting down things and so on. And so what hypnosis is, it's somebody tapping into your brain and guiding you. That's what it is. It's not giving over control to anybody. It's not evil and so on. And I had some spiritual things happen to me as well, which aligned with Christianity. And it was incredible. So now I use breathing exercises. I could self-hypnosis. I could do it now in 6 seconds. I could be under. I'm a Christian, say. I pray. I believe in God, a living God. I believe Jesus Christ is my Savior. And so I pray. I use sung worship. I listen to music. I take time out fishing because I'm on the spectrum, what was called Asperger's and autistic. And I need time on my own, and time by water is quite a common thing. I reckon a load of anglers, the carp fishermen particularly, are on the spectrum. I reckon virtually all of us are the in community. Anyway, but water just calms me down. Just being there in nature and the water. And I reset, and I have a foundation then to go back into the world.
It's a really helpful answer because you've just given people different ways that they can themselves access, if they're going through something that's anything related to yours or even not, just hearing your story and seeing how things have worked for you, in terms of, you spoke about the self-hypnosis, you spoke about deep breathing, and then you've given some different, prayer, worship, yes, wonderful. And then obviously distraction with fishing and being around calm water and recognizing that sometimes, sometimes even people who aren't on the spectrum also do benefit from having time on their own. Yeah. Arwyn, I wanted to ask you, so you spoke about the really difficult place where you were on the phone supporting somebody else who was experiencing suicidal thoughts, and then you told your son to tell your brother that you'd call him back. Is that something that you've thought about often, or is that something that affected your grief?
I felt guilty, but there was a situation at work which was the straw that broke the camel's back for my brother, where it was a situation at work. He thought he was going to lose his job, but he wasn't. He wasn't. It was in this day and age of political correctness, which made me angry, actually. Because at his funeral, the head of the social services was on his phone to me, and he said, "We will understand if you want us to keep away, because this obviously affected him." I said to him, "Look, what happened at work is not the thing that caused this." Because in my brother's letter, he wrote to whoever finds my body, "I'm calm about this. I've known all my life this day would come, and this is now the day." So my brother, as I said earlier, he didn't have a choice. He believed it's destiny almost, which is very sad. So it wasn't the work situation that did this. He'd had these feelings of mental health. And people on the spectrum, there's more prevalence of suicidal thoughts, people on the spectrum, than people who are not. And basically, he decided to take action. But I then said to this guy, head of social services, on the phone, I said, no, you're welcome to come, staff come. And they came, they gave us cards. And we had a card, and I remember the one person who who couldn't be there, said thank you, because he was a training social worker as well, my brother. But basically, he was the best trainer she'd ever had. And then a lady come up at the funeral, and she said, look, he trained me. I was changing career, going back to work and so on. He trained me. I cannot tell you how good he was as a trainer. We had these people saying this to us. So it made me angry initially. And so I was guilty, and I was angry. And you go around in a very rapid circle of emotions, very, very rapid. Well, sadness, sorrow, anger at him, anger itself, guilty you never phoned him, blah, blah, blah. And it's so rapid. And with all grief, doesn't matter whether it's suicide or anything else, I sincerely believe that I believe as a Christian, we were created to live eternally. So therefore, when we entered into a world whereby we now have illness and we die, that is alien to our inbuilt spiritual DNA, which is why we struggle with it so much. We struggle with illness, and we struggle with death and grief and bereavement. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I've learned is I used to think to anybody who is depressed, because I built a mask, built a front, not letting people see the real me, not even some of the people very close to me. And basically that's how I coped. That mask is now gone. And basically what I now do is I actually sit in a place where I've learnt to live with bereavement. As my father passed, my mother, other in-laws, etc., and my brother. You don't get over it, because I used to think, you're depressed, just grab life by the bollocks and get on with it, for goodness sake. That was my attitude to anybody who had depression. Just do that. Now, that's not my attitude. My attitude is totally changed and transformed. And now I try not to wear them up with regards to other people. If they like me, they like me. If they don't, doesn't matter.
It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to achieve. Not being able to take your mask off and, live in the world that we live in that is so judgmental as it is, and expectations of being a human are so difficult. So I think it's amazing that you can do that. So well done to you, and well done to everything that you've overcome with this way of thinking and utilizing the skills that you have, like deep breathing and worship, and taking off the mask and leaning on your family, like you said you have. So that's a wonderful skill to be having and passing on to people. And you're a really strong person, Arwyn. You're inspirational in terms of what you've done and achieved, and look at you you're at a place now where you're going to Italy this week to do some work for a client you've had for 4 years, and doing something that you absolutely love. So what a different place.
So Online Radio brings to you Miss Tina with Voices of Resilience.
Another song is a modern take on Amazing Grace. This is by Chris Tomlin, and it's Amazing Grace with an added sort of chorus, and my chains fell off. And the original was written by a slave trader who became a Christian. And within Amazing Grace, there's this line that goes, "'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved." This mystery that we can approach the throne of an awesome, fearful, incredible, loving God and Father through Jesus Christ, yet we are saved and redeemed and set free by the same grace that is fearful in many ways. It's a mystery. It's not fearful, something to be frightened of, but in the way that some people think, but it's fearful in the way that it's a total mystery. Yet we have a personal relationship through that same grace. And it's a real struggle for us to sum up what this mystery means and what it is. But this song encapsulates it probably as close as I've ever come across. "'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, yet grace my fears relieved." The same grace flowing from God the Father through Jesus Christ to us. And then my chains fell off. I've been set free.
So Online Radio brings to you Miss Tina with Voices of Resilience.
What I try to do, and I'm pretty rubbish at it, is what I've learned is, so I go around calling myself Time Lord because I capture moments in time, but I'm into sci-fi. And I remember one of the Star Trek movies, I love that too, Star Trek, Star Wars, but I remember one of the Star Trek movies where they meet God and this guy takes over the ship. And basically he offers to read Captain Kirk's mind. And Kirk goes, "Why?" "So that I might think back that I should have turned right when I turned left, or I should have turned left when I turned right." It's that sort of conversation. And that's all stuck in my mind. Because my first thoughts were very early on, she was very wise, and she knew how to be brutal and how not to be. Mm-hmm. I said to her, "I've started this new company, don't know whether it's going to work," and so on. I said this several weeks. And she said, "Arwyn, don't use the word should, could, would, should have, could have, would have." She said, "Because you're living in the past or the future." She said, "You can't do that. You need not do that." And I said to her one day, I said, well, when she said it again to me, I said, "Well, what comes then?" And she said, "Well, what you need to do is live for 3 hours, a 3-hour perpetual clock." I said, "Well, what happens at the end of the 3-hour perpetual clock?" She said, "I'll tell you if you want." I said, "Go on then." She said, "Death." And she's right. And that really shook me. Now, she was very careful when she said it and how. So what I have tried to do is completely get rid of those 3 words and derivatives of them, of could, would, should. Because I could have done this, or I could do this. You're living in the future or the past, and you're living in situations that are beyond your control. Yeah. Because you've lived it, or it's yet to happen. You're not going to control it. So what's the point of it? It's wasted energy. So that's genuinely what I try and do. And the other thing I try and do is I try and get rid of the word happy. Because happy, does it make you happy? Is it happy? The thing about happiness is it's dependent upon the car you drive, the vacation you have, the house you live in, the food you eat, whether you go out, whether you've got hobbies and so on. That's what happiness is. It's reliant upon the material. We have some control over that, but sometimes we don't. Sometimes things happen in our lives where that goes by the wayside. So what I prefer is this guy in the Bible called Paul, the Apostle Paul, who was in prison for his beliefs. And he said he's learned to be joyful in all circumstances, whether he's hungry, starving, whether he's got lots of food, whether he's free or in prison. He's learned to be joyful because he has a greater hope than this earth can have. I try and be joyful because that is a conscious decision. It's a conscious way of looking at things. I'm rubbish at it.
That's absolutely amazing. I think when you're talking, people can't see, but I'm nodding along because I'm thinking, I don't really know what the meaning of happiness is, and to me, however, when you talked about Paul, um, Paul, amazing story. I love Paul's story and everything that he did and does. And then when you talk about joy, that's my word that I use as well, actually, Arwen. So when I always say that regardless of what's happening in my life, I'm constantly trying to seek joy in the moments, even in the difficult ones. So yeah, absolutely. I agree with what you're saying. And I was going to ask you, like, what do you do to build resilience in the face of difficulties? What strategies have you got? But you've actually talked about quite a few. Is there any others that you would want to add?
Yeah, I might talk to my wife. I think it's very important. I've now got a friend of mine. He won't mind me mentioning him, John. He's my best friend, male friend I've ever had. And we meet up, we go to the cinema, we'll watch a movie together, we'll have a beer together, we'll just go down the pub and just chew the fat, we'll pray together. And I think having a life partner or a friend and I can go to John and he to me, and we can just share whatever we want with one another. And being able to do that, of being able to share the hurt, the pain, the joys, give advice to one another. And we can sometimes give advice to one another or give a word to one another that maybe isn't quite welcome, but we're prepared to take it because we have such a close relationship. I mean, he truly is my best friend. I mean, the best male friend in my life. I remember we were away, other friends. I said to them, I was just going to go ring my friend. I went and rung them, and I came back downstairs, and my wife said, "So you've been on that long, hour and 45 minutes?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "Wow!" And suddenly at that juncture, she suddenly realised that this relationship was something different that she'd never seen with me in 40 years. Now, John. I'll give his full name, John Hurrell. You're amazing, mate. He is truly my best mate I've ever had in my life.
A lot of people find it quite hard to find a good quality friendship where you can put in and get out as much as each other in a very equal sense, and being real. And it's wonderful that you have it. A lot of different men that I've spoken to find it quite hard to identify a man in their life who they would call their best friend. So I'm grateful that you've got that in your life, and I'm grateful that John has you as well.
Us men are really bad. And basically my wife said after my brother, she said, and the vicar at our church, they both said, you are going to a counsellor. I said, I don't need one. And they backed away. And then they eventually put me in touch with one. They were for various reasons, not for me. So I stopped that after a few months. And basically I said, see, I've done it. I'm a man. I can cope. And again, in the January 2013, my wife said, no, you're not coping. We cannot go on like this. And they found another one. And basically I went to them. And that completely transformed Jack. It was totally different ball game.
Amazing. And that's a plus side, I think. I'm hoping that all these interviews that I'm having are going to encourage men that are out there listening to this, that you can get help. It isn't weakness. It's strength to seek help from somebody else and guidance and things that you don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
I mean, what I would say to people is, men, okay, go and find your local men in sheds. It's just blokes who come together, they repair stuff like the repair shop, and while they're repairing stuff, they just chat to one another. Or look up the amazing charity called Tackling Minds. They've been on one of my favourite programmes on TV with Whitehouse, Bob Moultrie and Paul Whitehouse. And this young guy was suicidal, and he was an angler, he founded this charity, and he's called it Tackling Minds, and they now get referrals from the NHS. For blokes, mainly blokes, just pull up and go fishing. There are a load of anglers throughout the country, and it's spreading. There aren't enough, but it's growing. And blokes are just go to your GP, said, I've heard about this Tackling Minds. Please, can you make a referral to Tackling Minds and see if they've got a slot for me just to go fishing? And bloke, you don't have to fish before, completely whatever, but it's blokes just fishing and just they get chatting. You know, it's almost as though we need to be doing something else to open up.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah. What would you say to men that are listening in communities and countries that can't access things like Men's Shed? Do you have any suggestions for them?
I think first thing is go to your GP, go to a church, synagogue, whatever, and try and find somebody who is willing to become a friend of yours. There are lots of men around who are lonely as you. It's just a case of taking that brave step.
Thank you very much, Arwyn. That's really helpful. I wanted to ask you what you're most passionate about and how you pursue your passions.
I am passionate about telling stories through a single photo, a video stream which might be 10 seconds. How do you tell a story? I'm passionate about doing that. I'm passionate about my kids and my grandkids and who they've married. I love them to death. My wife's passionate about her, and we're in the autumn of our lives now, but we've got a great time ahead. Whenever we choose to retire, both of us love our jobs so much. That isn't on the horizon, immediate horizon, maybe medium term. Yeah, I think you asked as well, what do I want to leave as a legacy? I remember when I kept a diary many, many years ago, I came across that question myself, and I remember drawing a gravestone, R.I.P. Wise a man of faith. You know, that people see in me the poor reflection of God and Jesus Christ. That's honestly what I would like people to think of when they see me and a legacy of me. I fail like everybody else, but that would be my legacy, I would say.
So your legacy, just because it did break a tiny bit then, your legacy is for people to see Jesus in you. Is that right? Amazing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you're working in that way, Arwyn. It sounds like you're working in the way that, you know, considering all of the struggles that you've been through, and then you still turn to God and you still seek the Lord and you still see Jesus as your savior. I mean, that's amazing that you do that. Do you know what I mean? I think you're doing a wonderful job. We always feel like we're, as human beings, it's hard to live up, but by grace we are. You know, God has gifted you with.
Yeah, I'd fail every day. But I believe we need ultimately faith in Jesus Christ, and through him we find God our Father. And my aspiration every day is to find my identity in God the Father.
That's amazing. And I believe that you are doing that. I do believe that you are walking by faith, and just hearing you talk and the way that you describe your relationship with God, what you're trying to achieve. And I think that's something that we all need to, all of us people who believe in Jesus, that's something that we need to be seeking on a daily basis, is walking so close to Jesus that we're getting dust from his feet upon us, you know. Yeah, amazing. Yes, you said before you were conscious about the time. I just wanted to ask you, what are you grateful for?
Ultimately, I'm grateful for what Jesus has done in my life, for rescuing me from the miracle of preventing me from taking my own life. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for my kids and grandkids. I'm grateful for the privileged life that I've led, because I've lived in 1/3 of the world that is not generally homeless and starving, whereas 2/3 of the world is. I'm very grateful for that. And embarrassed and ashamed at the same time. But I'm grateful for all those things. And ongoing, I'm grateful for opportunities. And the other thing you become more, I'm 64 in June. The other thing you become more grateful of is you do start thinking of the remaining days and how long you've got. So on average mortality, I've got another 15, 16 years at most. And you start thinking about what you achieved, what you haven't achieved. Have I done enough for God? Have I not done enough for God? And having conversations with God about that. But I'm also grateful for a God who, through Jesus, we can approach, we can say sorry. And he says, I'm still with you.
Thank you so much, Arwyn, for sharing that. Thank you so much for your time, Arwyn. I wish you a wonderful day. I wish you luck with it. God bless you and God bless your family, and continue to grow in your relationship with Christ. Thank you so much. If this content has impacted you, please remember you are not alone. Reach out to Let's for confidential support and guidance by visiting our website, which is www.letsstoptheabuse.com, or you can reach us by phone and WhatsApp, which is +44 749 533 8830. Your well-being is important to us. That brings us to the end of our show. Thank you so much for staying with me, staying tuned. It's been lovely to have you part of our community. So Online Radio has a lot of things for everybody. Please check out our website, have a look around. There's talk shows, there's sports, there's gospel, there's a lot of music, a lot of good music, different types. See what tickles your fancy. Check us out. Join us. It's been wonderful to have you. Voices of Resilience will be back next week and every week. Thank you for tuning in.
So Online Radio brings to you Miss Tina with Voices of Resilience.